back to Yin and Yang the podcast. Yay!
Yay!
We're here. This is James, aka Young, your co-host, with Dan, my co-host, aka Yin, and we are here with Rama, Reddy. Woo!
Greetings, 大家好.
大家好. Yeah.
大家好.
And then I guess how would you say that in German? I guess you just say Guten Tag.
Grüß alle.
Grüß
alle. Yeah. Grüße. Yeah.
So I'll just read very quickly a quick bio from Rama. He from his website. He is a writer and educator based in Berlin, Germany. He believes that education is civilization's most vital tool. Much of his time is spent towards copywriting and teaching English for business, academia, and music. He is also an MMA coach. He has taught in Bangalore. Am I pronouncing that right? Yeah, Bangalore, India. He also has schools. I believe in you have a school in Europe, in Germany as well, right?
Yeah, I have a group that I'm teaching with here. Yep.
Awesome, great. And I had met Rama hella years ago.
Yeah, 2007.
Yeah.
We met gosh.
2007 back in Taiwan, so he can speak, some Mandarin. Yeah. 一点点, yeah.
一点点, 都忘了.
And since then, we started like this kind of like very small BJJ group at the Sida University with Elliot Corley. And yeah, we just hanged out since then. He came by the California one time and that was cool. We hanged out, and then since then, I've been following you on Instagram, your breakdowns on like fighting and MMA, and I listened to your Drysdale interview. Super geeky, super interesting. Yeah.
Thanks, man. That's the adjective I want. Yes.
Yeah, it's for all those BJJ. If you're a BJJ nerd listening to this, please go give yourself a treat and listen to the Robert Drysdale interview with Rama Reddy. It's on YouTube. It's amazing. It's great. I guess I'll start with like, hey, what's up? How you doing?
I'm all right, man. Yeah, I like you both know, I have a baby. He's around 3 months old, and so that's occupied the last 3 months of my life. And yeah, that's honestly a lot of that informs a lot of how I'm doing. Otherwise, I'm just a little bit sleepless. I'm a little fatter than usual. And I'm all right. Things are good.
That's good, man. Yeah. And so I guess maybe like a quick maybe self-introduction. I briefly went over some of your background, but yeah, if you want to give our audience a little breakdown of who you are, where you grew up, what brought you to Germany, just like whatever, what's it called, a Cliff Notes version of your life, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. I was born in Tarrytown, New York, which is Westchester County. Moved to Houston when I was 4 or 5. Then that place sucks. Then we moved to Seattle when I was 7. And basically I am a Seattleite. I would consider myself a Seattleite more than anything else. I completed my bachelor's, moved to Taiwan for a year, met James, met Elliot, got back into jiu-jitsu there. I'd taken a couple years off in college to be a college kid, and I had picked up this neck injury, and I don't know, just thought I should stop it. But then when I went to Taiwan, I realized how much I missed it, and I needed it. Put up scrawled a note on ruled lined paper and put it up in the Shida like bulletin board, and then got emailed by Elliot Corley, and he is now a dear friend of mine. James joined us not long afterwards. I believe you were training with Elliot prior to that, right?
Yeah, we were meeting. We were doing like our little fight club in the basement of. Well, it was like the first floor of the gym. Yeah.
So then we started training there too, and then we didn't know how to turn the lights on, so we were often training in the dark, which was kind of fun.
That
I
was
look back
fun,
at the
yeah.
time, I'm like, man, what chaos!
That's
What wonderful
crazy.
chaos. But yeah, and then moved back, completed my master's in education, and then realized I didn't want to be a teacher, even though I do love teaching. And moved to India, moved to Bangalore. That was 2011. Asked Elliot if he'd want to help. He said yes, and he stayed there for roughly a year. Helped me build a program. Basically rebuilt my understanding of striking with him, because he had a very regimented idea of what striking should look like. And he was coming from a boxing background also. And I really appreciated how he showed that to me. And that changed my paradigm towards boxing and striking altogether. And then, yeah, I still have a group there. And then I moved to Berlin in 2018. And then I had a baby, and now I'm talking to you.
Awesome. So so you were in India for about 7 years then, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. What prompted the move to Germany where you are now? Yeah.
A lot of things. I think in India, if you're working within India, it's just like, this is going to be offensive. I think it's a shithole. It's like, it's the worst place I've ever lived. It's the worst place I've ever lived. I've lived in the US, a few cities in the US. Hi. I've lived in the US. I've lived in Taiwan. I've lived in Germany. I've lived in Brazil a bit. And India was by far the hardest, like by far. It has like all the drawbacks of all those places. And then like, none of the saving graces. It's so hard. I mean, maybe like if I lived in Afghanistan, I would say Afghanistan was the worst or something, but I did not. So I think India is a really tough place to live. If you live there and it's like culturally yours, then, there's an amount of ownership and you feel okay with it. But I think if you're there, then you notice the corruption, you notice the traffic, the pollution, you notice all these things that come with overpopulation, but that also come with, I would say like it's a very hierarchical culture. So like, there's always this like aspect of assessment when you're talking to somebody, a lot of bribes, like you'd see in developing countries. And yeah, man, it's a really tough place. And I tried it for a few years and I stuck it out longer than I should have, honestly, because I thought that's like what a good entrepreneur would do. Like, stick with the business, rise and grind, bitch, that kind of thing. And man, I did that until I was just like a nub of myself. And then my wife was like, hey, we should try Berlin out. So I was like, fine, I'll try it out. Went back and forth for like a year or two, and then I decided this was probably a healthier place for me to be. And I made a great decision.
Oh.
What made you decide to go to Bangalore?
Bangalore. My dad is from Bangalore.
Okay.
And my mom is from like a relatively small town in southern India. And yeah, I just decided that Bangalore is growing very quickly, huge population. I mean, like now I think it's at 8.5 million or something. And yeah, I thought, if there's a place to do it, might as well be in a place that's maybe cheaper to get started and whatever else. But all those things were, wrong for multiple reasons.
They have a film festival there too, I believe. Yeah, or something.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. And in the South, they have, they have the, how do you call it? What do you call it? Biennale? Biennale?
Every 2 years or
it must be like another language, but yeah, it's this thing that happens every 2 years. I think it does travel around, but yeah. And Bangalore is a huge city. It's not like it's not the size of LA or Taipei yet, but it's pretty damn big.
And you met your wife in India, or?
I met her in Berlin as I was traveling through, and we met on Tinder.
Oh,
wow. Oh.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So we're not sponsored by Tinder, but I guess that's a plus for Tinder right there. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Tinder did his job. Yeah.
Oh, great. So you were like basically backpacking Europe at the time, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you were still coaching in India as well, or
Yeah. So basically, I went home for a month or two, came back, and then on the way back, I went through Europe. That
oh,
was it.
great. Wow. Wow. That's okay. So you did long distance for a while then, it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, months at a time. She would visit me. I would visit her.
Mm,
Yeah. It was
yeah.
cool. Like whenever she came, we always traveled someplace new, and it was cool. It was like, she's really into traveling too.
Awesome. How sorry, this is maybe a detour from your I will get to
Martial arts.
your expertise. Yeah, yeah. But I'm curious about, because my last relationship was long distance with my girlfriend in Taiwan. So I'm how did you know, I guess? Was there instant connection, love at first sight, or
No.
no?
No,
It
I'm
was just
yeah.
sex
It
was
wasn't
great.
that. Well, I mean, I think there's that, and then there's also like, you know how it is. Like as a man, you're often the person that needs to mature to like see the value of the relationship. So in my case, like she was like persistent enough, and she was cool, and she was fun, and she was pretty, and like she had these things that I really liked. But like the big thing was she was persistent. So
Oh.
she was willing to come to India a couple times. She would say, hey, come to Berlin, just like check it out, see if you like it, like just
Mm,
kind of letting me explore what this city could look like if I lived in it.
yeah.
And yeah, I needed someone like that. I needed someone that like could give me like that kind of guidance and that kind of structure and that kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, it was really refreshing too to have that coming from India, like being in India for so long.
Yeah.
Because when I mean, India is just like chaos incarnate. Just no rules, nothing matters. Like, it's just, are you at the top of the hierarchy? Okay, do whatever the fuck you want. Pay this person off, pay this person off. World is good. Like it's coming from that to someone trying to like structure something, but still like trying to show you how it could be. And, she thought about coming to Bangalore too. And I think she would have been open to both options, but then she did kind of give me the option to like come to Berlin too. And yeah, and I think because of her, yeah, for lack of a better word, her guidance, her leadership, I was really, I really saw the value in being with her.
It sounds like she was your, I guess the term, your rock, it seems, or your anchor in certain ways.
Yeah, yeah, I think
Your
that's fair to
rock.
say. Yeah, I think it's very fair to say. And not to get, I'm no sociologist, and I'm certainly no dating coach or anything, but like, if you're if there's a relationship and there's a man and a woman, then generally the man is kind of dictating direction and, where things go and, what we're doing and stuff. And I still have that energy, but then having someone that had the very, very long overview and maybe this more strategic outlook was really cool. And then I could put my energy into kind of the things that she was seeing.
Right. Because sidebar, when we visited, I think we were all about, when you visit the US, where I was living, I think we were all about trying to get laid. I mean,
Oh,
lack of a
yes.
better term. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, sorry. I hope your wife doesn't, doesn't take offense to listening to this if she
No,
hears it. But
no, she's cool.
But yeah, it's interesting because I went back to that. I was in that phase, and then I was in that phase in LA. Dan has known me in that phase for a while. The time that we've known each other, but now I'm in a committed relationship with a Japanese woman. And is your wife around the same age, I'm assuming, or?
She's a little bit older than me too, so that
Okay,
could
so
be.
that's yeah. So yeah, and we're not getting any younger, so I've been thinking about like, hey, maybe it's time.
But do you age though? Look at you.
I do age. Yeah. And
Okay.
my girlfriend, she's younger than me. But I think in many ways she's like an old soul, very very mature in more ways than I am in certain aspects. She's definitely not as experienced as I am in like, relationships and hooking up and stuff. She doesn't, she was never into that.
Mhm.
So I find it very kind of like refreshing. It's a different perspective. Anyways, that's where my mind is. So when I heard about your relationship, it's kind of like, I was kind of curious about that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm in that headspace now about being in a serious committed relationship and not trying to
Yeah,
screw everything. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's a very natural development. Like, I mean, now that I have a son, it's kind of like I want him to get past the, fuck everything phase as quickly as possible. So like, I've been thinking about that too. Like, what does maturity look like, and what are aspects of responsibility that he can take on, and what are social responsibilities that he would be proud to take on. And these are
Dan,
all
I guess
things.
you're further
Yeah.
along in you're further along in this. So two questions for you, Dan, since we're on this topic. Was your wife kind of like a rock, or were you like the base in the relationship? And then for your kids, like to Rama's question, like how did you navigate that? I mean, they're still young, but yeah.
The rock question is actually very interesting, but I mean, she's being an artist or an actor at the time. Things were like a lot more chaotic. Her schedule is still pretty chaotic, but I have the 9 to 5. So as far as like the life perspective, I'm not sure how to answer that. I have to think about that one. But as far as the kids are concerned, you have all these grand plans for your kids, but you really have to adjust as they grow older and see what they're like. And then at some point you're just like, oh man, I got to make sure that this kid is alive and just stays alive and healthy. And then once you get to another phase, you're like, oh man, once they get to school, I was like, I hope they're not assholes. They're not the bully, or they're not the ones that are shunned. So you want to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that they're confident and good people. And
Mm-hmm.
now, like, as they're getting, my older kid is like 9, and I'm hearing the stories like, oh, how am I going to get him into school, like college? Because that's super difficult now.
Super
SATs or
expensive.
ACTs,
Yeah.
it's expensive. But then we are just talking to a friend, and he was like talking about how his kid got into Johns Hopkins, and it was like he was like a 4.0 student, in the debate team, ranked 11th in golf, did all these things, but it was almost very painful for him to get into Johns Hopkins or any of the schools that he wanted to get into.
Is he Asian
So
or?
he's half Korean and half white, and his parents are both lawyers, so I think that's why he's into debate. But it's just all these things, as they get older, your things change, but the underlying thing is like, you want to make sure that they're confident and that they're comfortable with who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And then you worry, as an Asian kid, you're like, oh man, I remember getting bullied. I was like, I have to make sure that they know some martial arts.
Yes.
Even if it's just like rudimentary, that they know how to throw a punch and know how to like actually redirect energy. Like, these days you watch people get tackled, so you have to make sure that they know how, just a little bit enough to like defend themselves and not get their ass kicked.
Or break fall. Learn how to break fall, right?
Yeah. All these things go into your mind because as minorities, you have to think about these things. Growing up in America, I mean, I was a kid in the 80s and I was like, oh man, it's just like shitty being like one of the only Chinese kids in San Diego. So, or in my school at least.
Uh-huh.
Are you seeing any anti-Asian stuff in Germany at all, or Rama?
No. I mean, Germany too is just like hypersensitive about anything dealing with race. I wonder why. I mean, like, so and I'm in old East Berlin, which was communist,
right.
And there are generations of Vietnamese here. So like basically as fellow communists, the Vietnamese that came here, and it's quite a large minority here in my neighborhood. And at this point too, like they've been here 3 generations. They're German. But and they speak with like a Berlin dialect too, which is a trip for me. But yeah, they're like really well ingrained in the city, and I work like a little bit outside of the urban space, and there too, I noticed that people are like hypersensitive about offending you. So they won't ask you if I say I'm from the States. Like the second question that I get in the States is, but like, where are you from?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah. And it's like, okay, I'm not going to take offense to that. I get what you mean. Like genetically, yeah, okay. But in here, they do not ask that shit. It's like, you're American? Okay, you're American. And like, obviously, I do not have like an American name. I don't have like an apple pie name, So, yeah, I mean, it's them purposely holding that question back, and they're I noticed this too. Like my wife Tatiana didn't know the exact origins, genetically of one of her friends, and like one of her best friends, and I was like, aren't you curious? He's like, no, it's like a rude question to ask.
Interesting. Oh
yeah.
In the States, we're like, oh no, yeah, okay. Where are your parents from? What's the lineage?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
is like, for instance, like my next question is, your wife is white German or?
She's white. Yeah. I mean, like it gets it. I think when you say like German, like we have the idea of like some like homogenous group of people that are 80 million strong. But then they're quite divided within Germany. And then her grandparents were part of something called the Donauschwaben. So have you heard Swabia?
No.
Swabians. So it's in Stout. Do you know Stuttgart, the city of Stuttgart?
Yeah.
Okay. So Stuttgart is where like Mercedes-Benz is headquartered and whatever else. Anyway, that area is called Swabia, and Swabia was a name of a Germanic tribe. And there's a minority that was in Hungary, Serbia, Balkans, called the Donauschwaben. Donau is the Danube River.
Okay.
And so then they were called the Donauschwaben. And then after World War II, her grandfather, by the way, wrote an autobiography that is just harrowing, detailing his life through World War II. I mean, his family was massacred, basically. And then they escaped to Austria, and then they were refugees from Austria, and they came to Swabia. So on her dad's side, she is Donauschwaben, which is something really interesting, different. Just it tells you just how widespread the German people are, kind of.
Right. It's kind of interesting because as foreigners, like non-German people, we assume, blonde hair, blue eyes, all Germans, right? And that they're all,
homogenous,
right? And then we say, white American or European Americans say the same thing about, China, India, whatever.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. It's like, oh, what India is just, there's no South. What's the difference between North and South? It's just India, right? So.
Yeah, dude, this is always the thing with me and her mom. Her mom's wonderful. Love her mom. But like, she would always be like, oh, here's this book I got you, or here's like this this movie I watched. And I was like, yeah, that's really cool. It's Hindi. We don't speak Hindi, but like, oh, cool. Like, I'm glad you liked it. And like, I think for her, for the last like couple of years, it's been like, oh, India is like this giant ass country with 1.2 billion people in it.
Right.
And Rama is part of a very small minority that speaks only 80 million speakers. It's been a learning process for her, and for obviously for China too. Like, I mean, or even Taiwan. Jesus, like how many ethnicities are on the island? I think the idea of, this is like a lesson I used to teach in high school. The idea of race versus nationality versus ethnicity, and how these kind of interplay with each other, and like we should try to keep them apart, though there is some crossover and stuff. But yeah, it's a very interesting concept.
what does your family speak again? Sorry.
Telugu.
Telugu. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so it's
I
a stout.
worked for a short time at a localization company, and
Uh-huh.
we would have sometimes do localization for India, and then we would do like we would hit the main ones. We'd go like, okay, so Hindi, there's Telugu, there's like
Tamil.
what's that?
Well, Tamil is the huge one, and then Malayalam is also it's another minority.
Malayalam, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, it was always like, yeah, but the sorry, but yeah, the main the we would have like we would get some help, and like the people in India are dirt cheap. Like they will do it like soup, whatever you need done, like they'll do it like half the rate of what like anyone else would do, you know? So like, and like, but finding a quality one, like eventually after like through the years, this company had found like some quality service providers in India. But like they said, man, it was tough though. Like, you know, cause yeah. So yeah, you know, interesting working with India. Anyways, so I'd like to kind of circle back to back to your life story again, but maybe through a martial lens, through a martial arts lens. Like, did you start with wrestling? Did you start with BJJ?
Yeah.
I know that when we met, so this is a short anecdote, but like, so Elliot and I had been like, we had met through like, I'd see him around the language school that we were at, and he saw me visit a kickboxing group, right? And he walked up to me, and he told me later, like that's so out of character for him because he's an introvert. But he said he walked up to me and said, "Hey, I've seen you before. You're into martial arts. Let's exchange info, right?" So we started this group. Me and him just started training on our own. And then I guess he had started training separately with you, and then and then I met you. And at that time, when we started rolling, he told me that I was the best person he had ever rolled with, because he had barely started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now he can kill me. He can kill me now. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's really good.
He's really good. Yeah. And
but
then when and then he told me after rolling with you though that before me after other than you, like he said that you were like whoa, like super saiyan level compared to me. Well, not he didn't say that to my face, but he said that he said that like I was the best person at the time. But then Rama came along and just like one time Rama did he did this, I don't know what it's called. It looked like a can opener submission on Elliot. And I looked at it, I was watching it, I was like, oh shit, is this spine gonna break? Is Elliot? And Elliot was like, yeah. And
yeah, I used to like the camel clutch a lot. Yeah.
Camel clutch.
So basically Rama opened us up to the world of grappling in a larger sense, because both him and I had been trained by a blue belt before, like for like a couple months or something in college, and Elliot was pretty fresh about it. But then Rama came along and he opened up our world to grappling. So yeah, so just a little anecdote. So yeah, how about yourself? So you started with wrestling or like in Seattle?
Started wrestling in middle school. Yeah, at Einstein Middle School, we had wrestling, and I joined. I was Einstein. Like this. Yeah, go Einstein energy. And I was just like this chubby kid, and I thought it'd be fun, and I thought maybe I'd be good. And dude, there's no one that didn't wreck me. And then I noticed looking back too, like the coaching methodology they had was like super old school. I mean, just like for technical training, not great. I mean, it's just about exposing the kids to that stuff. That's really cool. And did it through high school. And when I was 17, 18, I joined a jiu-jitsu club with Brian Johnson, Northwest Jiu-Jitsu. And I was there through basically, took a couple years off in college, but like, I got my blue belt, took a couple years off as blue belts do. And then, yeah, then I started back up again when I started when I came back from Taiwan. And yeah, I definitely noticed I was like missing. I was not the same. I remember I remember never being tired when I was like 17, 18, 19.
Mm.
And then you get back and you're like 22, 23, and you're like, holy fuck, can't breathe. Like,
Should be
everything's
your prime
harder.
of your life, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, man. And then, yeah, like I was saying, I think Elliot really changed my outlook on striking and how I learn striking, and then how I see striking, and how I just, yeah, really set me down a path of self-discovery in striking and boxing.
Oh, that's great. If our listeners don't know, Elliot Corley, he has a professional record, right?
Yeah, he's 2-2, I think, or
Yeah.
3-2 or something. Yeah.
So he's a former fighter. He's now, what does he do now? Coaching, I'm thinking.
Yeah, he's coaching a couple times a week, and he's doing English teaching.
And he does like some
and
stuff with stocks. Yeah. Last time I spoke with him.
crypto. He's really big into crypto.
Oh, he is. Okay. So
Yeah.
he's this, I think he speaks 4 languages very well. Like he doesn't just speak them like half fluent. He speaks 4 languages very well. Spanish was like, cause his background his family speaks Spanish and English, because he grew up in the US, but then, yeah, his Mandarin's better than mine. I can say that, humbly.
Wow.
His
man.
Mandarin's really good. Cause he's into like, what
All
is
the
it called?
minutiae
He's
of
into
the
like
language.
that, like, old school Mandarin, right? So then when
Like
he
the
went to
Chengyu,
Taiwan,
like,
oh, sorry, what was that?
he said like he like learns all the Chengyu things,
Yeah, the Tengyu, yeah, the idioms. So basically when he spoke to a Taiwanese person, they were like, you speak like someone from 100 years ago. And then he speaks Japanese, which I'm learning right now. Yeah. And how's your German, by the way? Sidebar.
B2 level, so upper intermediate.
Oh, nice. Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I can get around.
That's awesome. So anyways, yeah, I just want to give a plug out to our mutual friend, Elliot. Hope you're well. I tried to get him on a few times, but he was like, I'm not the best about public speaking. Yeah. So, but which is fine. Yeah.
I think it's for proof of that, you could watch his one fight. He fought on a 1 card against a Malaysian guy and knocked him out with an elbow. And then afterwards, he's on the mic and just like, just almost silent, and then be like, oh yeah, that's the first time I've ever thrown an elbow in my life.
But super technical. I can concur. Like talking to him about martial arts is like, he breaks it down. It's like, it's a science. It's a science.
Mm-hmm.
It's a chess game, and it's a science. It's an art as well. And I think looking at your videos now, Rama, I can see like you're taking it into it's scientific, but in a way it's also very approachable, right? You're using like nice diagrams, some anime clips here and there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm kind of curious so sorry, to continue with your story. So you got into jiu-jitsu, you were missing jiu-jitsu, and then you trained with Machado, you said.
Yeah, so I've trained at Hadra Machado's place in Pasadena for 5-6 weeks. He was super nice. I mean, like, I really enjoyed it. There's a trainer there named Khalil, also really cool guy. And if you get a chance, I thought like very warm environment, very cool group of people there. And I learned a lot when I was there. I remember like training there for 5 weeks and then coming back to Seattle and being like, and feeling good.
Like, I've been to the master. I've been to Yoda.
Honestly, I didn't notice that much of a difference between how Brian taught and how Hadra taught. What the main thing I noticed was that Brian was always on time, and the Brazilians weren't necessarily. So
it's expensive too. Machado, I remember I checked out some of the gym rates, and it's not cheap. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, back then I think it was like $150, which was like double the price of what they were doing in Seattle too. But they did have more training time, so like if you could make it, it was worth it. I don't know. And when you're 18, then you don't care if your leg could be falling off, and then next day it's fine. Um,
And then you have a school still in Bangalore?
yeah, I have basically the way I run my schools is there's an existing space, and then someone asks me for a martial arts program, and
Right.
either we do that like on an hourly basis. So like we send a trainer there, and they get paid on hourly, or we do like a revenue split. And yeah, so I have India right now. There are 2 places in Bangalore, I should say, where we train.
And then in Germany, how many places do you have?
In Germany, I just have the group I train with, and yeah, that's going great. I hope to be full time by the end of the year.
That's great. Yeah.
How was it during COVID teaching grappling arts?
Not great. Yeah, yeah, we were actually training outside for a while because if he was outside, then there wouldn't be the same restrictions.
Okay.
But if they're indoors, then there is. So yeah, it was really tough. But what I did was I just gave free classes. So I did like video classes for free, and I did outside classes here in Germany for free, wrestling and boxing. And I was able to like maintain like the core of a group, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then when we got a place, they came, and we could start back up in earnest. And it was really cool.
And then is it more than just a core group now? Have you got like more students come by?
Yeah, we have like 40 something, 44.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know how it is, like, maybe,
I do.
10, 20% actually show up on a day.
Yeah.
And then maybe 30% sign up and never come back. So it's like, yeah, one of those things. What martial arts do you practice?
I do Chole Fut Kung Fu. And then I've been teaching since college. So I totally understand that whole dynamic of like the students like showing up. The ones who show up are like super dedicated. I've also had ones that are like, they come in hardcore and then they burn out so fast. And then all of a sudden they're like gone. They don't say anything. They just like, fade away.
Yeah. That's one thing with like trying to build a community too. It's like, how do you get these people interacting with each other and being friends with each other? And so like we were like when we first started up, we were doing like we'd have like a monthly kind of meetup somewhere. And our open mats are wild. Our open mats are just so crazy because like they bring their kids too.
Right.
And then basically our gym is also like a rehab place. So they have all this junk. It's okay. Let me start this off. It's a rehab place. They have like these pads. They have foam frisbees. They have these rubber rings. They have the TheraBands that if one kid holds that end and one kid holds that end, well, it's a fucking giant slingshot. And it's also a ninjutsu school. So they have like spears lining one wall. It is just wild. It's just like a crazy place to train. And I really do enjoy it because it makes you feel like the space is being well used. Even though it's not, I don't own the space or anything, but it just makes me feel like, this is how I think a good dojo should be used. Like it's very usable. So yeah, it's a really cool group and a really cool space. And it's really gratifying to be a teacher here.
How have your thoughts on so Elliot was obviously a big influence, and now that you're teaching, that you taught in India and then now you're teaching in Germany, how has your like philosophy of martial arts changed or adapted over the years? I know it's kind of a big question, but kind of curious to hear. Like, is your focus, do you believe in styles, like styles make fights, like,
Abso-fucking-lutely. Yes. It's almost like you read my mind. Yeah, I was going to say, I think archetypes are very, very important. And like, we can start with like a psychological profile, like understanding this, the psychological underpinnings of a person and then why they're doing it. And that often, like 95% of the time that correlates to a certain style within fighting. So then you can start off with the psychological base, then go on to the strategic base, like how, based on this psychological base, do they want to fight, or do they want the fight to go? And then there's like the tactics and techniques that are built off that. And yeah, it's really hard to get someone to fight against their type, against their own psychology. So you do want to try to steer people wisely into into the proper archetype.
I guess
And-
you profiled some fighters in your Instagram videos. Let's take a famous one. Let's say Conor McGregor. Like, can you give like that kind of like, how would you break down a Conor McGregor type of person?
Yeah, I mean, I'm basing this off of what we've already seen, but so let's start off with, what was that guy's goal going into fighting? From the get-go, it seems to have been money. I think winning is important to him, but I think money was also very important to him, especially when you're living on when you're in poverty. So winning for him was good. Winning and getting into the higher and higher tiers of MMA, and then getting a larger and larger fan base. So in that case, winning was good. What's the guy blessed with? He's blessed with a lot of explosiveness, and he has a good reaction time, and he built his entire game around his left hand. So that's what he did. So basically, he had 4 or 5 entries for his left hand, sometimes going backwards, sometimes going forwards, and he could also play with his length in a way that other people couldn't, because they didn't expect the shot to go that far. He has all these things that are going for him, and he was able to lead people into his left hand very frequently, and finish people off in the first round and put pressure on them. And so then there's that, and that leads to his winning, and that led to money. And he's a rather and maybe increasingly, I wonder if it's more now towards just winning for the sake of his pride, as opposed to money, because he doesn't need money anymore. But that's kind of my broad understanding of Conor McGregor as a fighter. And it's always evolving.
And then you've experienced fighters or students from like 3 different countries at least, the US, India, Bangalore specifically, and Germany. Have you noticed like the different differences in the students themselves, like their mindset? Because I know that someone once said that just for music, for example, American students will just like do whatever you tell them. But then the Europeans will actually like, oh, what if I did this? What would happen if I did that? I mean, do you see that kind of like curiosity difference between like the 3 different countries that you have the most experience with?
In terms of curiosity, I would say,
just like the learning style.
Yeah, I think this does, we should start with like the culture. I think Germany and the US, at least, or in, Seattle, are like quite close.
Right.
There's some difference there, but I think they're quite close. India is like a whole nother animal. It's like, the hierarchy is very important. Yes, sir, no, sir. There's a lot more like reverence given to you, like the point where I was like sometimes uncomfortable, man. Like, it's like, I'm, definitely American in that regard, but I really like flat hierarchies. But like, there's a lot of reverence there, and it's different. I think it's very top down. So if someone's on your side, then like, you really have to like your job is just like to be, and then they'll just kind of they'll worship you. It's kind of weird. But and I have to say, like, the students that I get along with most are the most westernized students in India. Like, the ones that are like a little too sycophantic for me, like, it's weird because I'm not sure if I can trust them.
Right.
It's a little different. And then in Germany and the States, it's much more, everyone's equal. We're all here to have a good time. Germany and Seattle, especially, very athletic places.
Right.
A lot of people have sports that they do otherwise. They're trying jiu-jitsu out. It's their fourth sport or something, and they're bringing that prior movement vocabulary to the sport. And yeah, man, I think it's just, they're very, very different places. But, broadly speaking, I think Germany and the US were much more straightforward in terms of training.
Okay.
Whereas I think there's more like people management in the US, in India, I'm sorry.
Yeah, because my friend, who lived in Japan for a while, he wanted to go play basketball as an example. And for a pickup game, they would spend an hour just doing drills. Before the pickup game, they would do layup lines, they do basketball drills. And that's how they approach everything, I think. You has to be a structured thing. You have to practice your craft before you can actually enjoy the fruits of your labor. So
I'm down with that.
Yeah. Well, I was just curious. I mean, everyone's like thought process is about how they learn and how they teach, and everything is going to be different from country to country, culture to culture. So I was just curious about that, because now you have like a very unique perspective from going to 3 different continents and 3 different cultures, within each continent. So just curious.
Yeah, no, that's true. I would, I really like it when people are, as a teaching methodology, when we're warming up with things that we'll actually use, which is why like my jiu-jitsu warm now is only 5 minutes, but it's only the movements that we'll actually use, as opposed to like shrimping down a line. Have you done jiu-jitsu also, Dan?
No, I've done some judo, but not jiu-jitsu.
Okay, so with judo, for example, also, is shrimping down a line useful? Debatable. We don't really use a shrimp like that. Like you're using it to go laterally, not backwards. So things like that. I think there's a lot of tradition in martial arts and in teaching, and we just do things that we were shown because they worked good enough. If it ain't broken,
right?
And I'd wonder also if this Japanese methodology, where we're doing layups on both sides, hitting from the top of the key. I don't know. Like you're doing all these things that are maybe useful and you'll actually use in the game if that's a better methodology.
Right.
Yeah. So now I'm with a jiu-jitsu group here. I'm still a white belt, by the way. All these years.
Amazing.
I don't think there's been any white belt that's as long as me, because I took a break. I had skin issues with psoriasis, so I took a long break from BJJ, because that's no bueno for skin. I got, I was like, I came to Japan. I was like, you know what? My first thought was, I've been in Japan for about 4 months now. My first thought was like, dude, it's the birthplace of judo. I want to learn judo here. So I went around. I got some information from what's in the area. And I found one place at a Budokan, which is like a martial arts place. And training literally means martial arts dojo. And there's like only kids in the class, in the judo class. I was like, what's going on? And I was like, okay, I asked the guy, very deferential. I was like, hey, I would like to try an adult class.
This is an adult class.
And he said, okay, well, let me check with this. There is a school we're affiliated with. There's a prefecture, there's an association, there's like a whole bureaucracy of judo, right?
Your Japanese is good, man.
No. This is through like Google Translate and throwing some terms in there that I'm still working on it. But yeah, glad that you caught that linguistic. My Japanese is it's like N4, N5 right now, which is low. And then I asked him, hey, can I join, the adult? And then he made a call. Some guy made a call speaking Japanese somewhere. I didn't understand. And then, and he's like, no, sorry, because of Corona, you can't really, they're not allowing new members. Right. So, and I was like, okay, I wonder if this is, I didn't want to do this whole process for like every I didn't want to like keep knocking on so many doors. You know, I only have so
Yeah.
much time and energy. And I think it was the only thing available in my area. So I found a jiu-jitsu school though, which is it was kind of a couple stops away.
Brazilian
And
Jiu-Jitsu?
what's that?
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Not,
Really?
cool.
yeah. So yeah. Okay. I mean, I know you're like a jiu-jitsu nerd. Like we can go down that path if we want. Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Okay,
Which
cool.
they call just jiu-jitsu in Brazil, right? So yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, I found Brazilian jiu-jitsu and the guy was like, yeah, join, come on, open mat. Yeah, that's, you know, and the culture. And I went to 2 different jiu-jitsu schools here, and I went with one that I felt more comfortable with, and I liked the teacher more. I mean, they were both great, but like I went to one that I felt more comfortable with. And there's a certain culture, I think, with martial arts. We're talking about cultures with countries, right? But I
Mhm.
think it's interesting because in art, even though there are from different, it's, you know, jiu-jitsu has spread from, you know, traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu has spread, you know, to like all parts of the world. But there's a certain like, I don't know, there is a certain culture within each martial art.
Absolutely.
Because I have found with the Brazilian jiu-jitsu people, that practitioners, there was one guy that was there was one sensei who is half Brazilian, half Japanese. There's another sensei I met he's just full Japanese, but very opening, very welcoming, and very, you know, like humble, super nice. I mean, I have met some bad jiu-jitsu teachers in America before, but I was lucky but there was always a sense of like, you know, that the hierarchy that I felt when I was talking to the judo people was very regimented. Like he had to make a
Mm.
phone call. You can't just go. I need to make a call first, you know? Whereas with jiu-jitsu school, I call, hey, is it okay if I come? Yeah, come on over. Bring, you don't have a gi, I'll let you borrow one. I don't know. Rama, do you get that sense with styles? Like certain styles have certain cultures? Martial arts
Absolutely.
styles, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think you'd be hard pressed to go to a judo school, and then when you show a technique, they just sit on the ground with their hands behind them like this, and then you know, like their legs splayed, and they're just looking at you like this. I think you'd be very hard pressed to have a judo school that even allows that. Like it just would not be okay. Whereas in you know, with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the Brazilian aspect of that art is everywhere. Like we don't bow before we spar, we slap hands. And yeah, it's permeated a lot of the culture. And you know, I do recommend you read up on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in its infancy in Brazil. Like it was not pretty. It was not cool. It was not a very open martial art necessarily for most people.
Yeah.
But then when it came to the US, and then it got just totally globalized into like hippie golf martial arts kind of thing.
It's kind of a bougie sport, like it, right? It's a little bougie, isn't it? Or
well, yeah. I'm not sure if I want to say bougie. I like it feels like the Burning Man of martial arts or something. You know, like you know, like just like everyone's welcome. Yeah, wear that fucking I don't know, Pikachu gi. Sure.
Oh, you smoke weed, me too.
I mean, but like, yeah, and there's like, and I think Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like the aspects of Brazilianness are important. But I gotta say, I think the Americanness is there too, in a way that's really interesting. I think, and I do think that aspect of like camaraderie and community is not necessarily a Brazilian thing. I think it's maybe an American thing. I'm not Brazilian, so like I would, and I've only been doing this martial arts since 2003, so like I'm no expert by any means. But yeah, that's my understanding. Like think about BJJ Globetrotters. Dan, let me just explain this to you. BJJ Globetrotters is a martial arts group on Facebook. I mean, 50, 60,000 members, whatever else. And basically, school owners can say, "Hi, if you're traveling through, you can hang out with me. Like, you can come train with me, free classes, no sweat." And many of them will also offer you a place to sleep. So like they're actively encouraging, like the dissemination of knowledge, but also like this ethos of togetherness, this camaraderie. There's no boxing Globetrotters group. No. There's no Judo Globetrotters group. There's no wrestling Globetrotters group. Why is Jiu-Jitsu able to inculcate this, hippie golfing bond between us? Yeah, I mean, there's something to it, man. And
there's something to it, yeah.
And I don't necessarily think it's a Brazilian thing. I do think it's at least partially American. Is my very spitball hypothesis.
I do think there is this thing, American idea of what you mentioned before, this kind of flat hierarchy of like, hey, you can call your mom by their first name, or like, sorry, that's a white thing, not necessarily an American thing. But there is a certain sense I notice of how in America there's this idea of hierarchy is a little bit more, it's not as rigid as in like Japan. Like the feeling, I'm sure if I knocked on some more doors, I might be able to find a good judo school. But right now I'm happy with jiu-jitsu. Omicron variant is still around, so I don't think I'll be able to get into any judo schools anytime soon. So I'm like, dude, I'm digging this jiu-jitsu school. I'm hopefully going to get that blue belt soon. After 15 years, I'll get that blue belt soon. I don't know if this joke is true, but supposedly if you want to stay a white belt for a long time, you ask the instructor, "Hey, where's my blue belt?" And then you'll stay a white belt for even longer. Yeah.
If someone asked me that, I'd be like, man. But yeah, I have a curriculum in place. So like, if they've done everything in the curriculum, then they're undeniably a blue belt. I'm probably going to give a blue belt on Sunday. That could be true though. If someone was just like, "Where's my blue belt?" Like, I mean,
entitlement.
I don't know.
Yeah.
How many belts do you have in your school? How many belts are there in BJJ or Jiu-Jitsu?
Overall, there are 5 belts. There are white, blue, purple, brown, black. And then in my school, we have, as of Sunday, we'll have 2 blue belts and a purple belt.
Okay.
And then there's one guy that's been training for 7 years, and I think he's something like James. Just like, didn't stick around long enough at any particular school to get belted, but he's way too good to be a white belt. So
they call them like white tigers, I guess. White tigers.
Is that what they're called? Yeah.
That's what I saw on Reddit. So yeah. I was like, that's me, because I'm tapping some blue belts, right? And I'm like, I'm sorry, but like I've been doing this for.
I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry. Humble brag. Yeah. I lift weights too, maybe. I don't know. That helps.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, yeah. I just want to respect your time. Are you okay to go over a little bit, or how are you right now? Yeah.
I could double check.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Should we pause the recording?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah. I'll just keep recording. I can edit it later. Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. Okay, sure. Yeah. I'm gonna use the restroom. Yeah. I'll be right back, Dan.
Yep.
So yeah, I guess I think it would be a missed opportunity if I didn't ask kind of about your philosophy on so you're very you have multiple disciplines, not just martial arts, but you're a student of education, you're a student of philosophy, you're a student of history. So I'm kind of how I say it, I guess from your studies, what are some life lessons that you have gleaned over the years as a teacher, as a coach? What are some of the lessons that you would tell your students, or that you hope to imbue into your son, your newborn?
Yeah, it's a big question. I mean, what I tend to start off with is my advisor through my master's program. So she had a very cool 4 R's system. So the 4 R's, let me see if I can remember this. You have relevancy. So is it relevant to what they are going to experience? So can they actually use it in the real world or apply it to whatever they're doing? There is relationship, which is the relationship that you have with the teacher, and the student teacher relationship. This is, I think, more important in places like India, but it's important everywhere. And then last, you have rigor. Rigor is the tactics and strategy of how the information will be fed to the student. Now, when all those are combined, then you have results, which are the measurable increases in performance from the student. And then based on the results, you should be able to sharpen the other three. Yeah, so that's where I always start. I was in Taiwan, so this is before I did my master's, and higher education, take it for what it is. I think it, for the most part, I think you could do fine in the world without it. Some of my best friends that are very successful didn't have a degree at all, but I did learn from my master's, and this was probably the most important thing that I learned. In Taiwan, I was a total asshole as a teacher, as an English teacher. But my kids scored really, really well. They didn't like me, but they scored really well, and their parents liked me. And yeah, that was like my thing in Taiwan. I just got used to like kids not liking me, and then them scoring really well, and then never talking to them again. Like that was it.
You're very hard on them, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah, I was super tough. I like when I look back, I'm like, man, I was such a dickhole. And when I look back too, I'm thinking like I just had like missed opportunities to like be a really nice, warm person, and they probably would have performed the same, or even better maybe, or like they would have shared more with me or something. But I was just like, maybe a little bit emotionally distant or very conservative with how I thought good performance looked like.
Yeah.
And also like when parents are like patting on the back, like, what more, and you're like, I'm a 22, 23-year-old kid. Like that's all the positive reinforcement I needed. But yeah, when I look back now, like I would have been okay. Like now, if I teach that class, I would have been okay with them failing as long as they were happy. Like I want to get to know them now. And I want to take that time to like get to know them as individuals. And yeah, that's a regret I have actually, that was like that. So yeah, that's the really big transformational change that I went through. I don't think most people have this because most people are not sociopaths.
Well, you'll be surprised, I guess. Yeah. in the
yeah,
high performers,
right
there's a lot of high performers that are a little, yeah.
Yeah, there's actually something on NPR that I recently heard about high performers. I mean, this is getting a little dark, but like high performers are the best at lying to themselves. So like they did the psychological test, and the basic psychological test is yes or no questions. And then you say, yes or no, have you ever thought about this? Oh, for example, have you ever thought about killing yourself? Okay, so that's a rhetorical question, but like in this test, there's a tendency for high performers to say, no, I've never thought about killing myself. Why is that? That's to maintain like a certain amount of not regularity, but like so they don't have like cognitive dissonance within themselves. But everyone's thought about it. It's like a universal human thought, at our darkest moments. So like the idea was you were going to find questions that people, that we know the answer to because they're universal. And then we're going to ask, and then we're going to see who lies about it. And then we're also going to check how they perform in these things or that things. And what they noticed was that elite athletes tended to lie the most to themselves and to the person they're talking to.
Yeah, I sometimes I wonder about that. Like so in economics and sciences too, there's like well, what's really a causation? There's a causation problem, right? Because is it because they're an elite athlete that they lie, or is it because they lie to themselves that they're an elite athlete, right? So there's a causation issue, right? In science, we're not sure if if A influences B, or is it because B influences A? So
Mm.
because I wonder about that, because then that there's a dangerous path, right? It's like, oh, guess what, everyone, just lie to yourself, you're gonna be an elite athlete, right? But you might be miserable, but who cares, you'll be an elite, whatever you do. So
Well, I mean, you have to believe it too. I mean, you can't just be like, it's hard to make yourself believe something that you don't actually believe.
fake it till you make it, maybe, or I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I have to look at science about that in that
Yeah.
to see if that's actually possible.
Yeah, but it sounds like, just from listening to you, it's more now about the human connection, human experience, versus
Yeah.
just getting results. Is that fair
Yeah.
to say? Yeah.
Yeah, that's totally fair to say. Yeah, I think part of that too is like the idea of memento mori, like the idea of like remembering death. Like we have such a finite time, and yet, we treat it like that. No, I was treating it like we had, every moment was the thing to win. And I think now, like, much more comfortable with seeing jiu-jitsu as hippie golf, as just like something people, something that like 40-year-olds do, for 2 hours every week. Like, yeah, man, like just do you, and then let's hang out, let's have fun, let's be friends.
Right. Let's have hot dogs. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's very fulfilling. Also, I find a lot in that.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. Sorry, is your you're kind of blurry. I'm trying to see. No,
Yeah,
let's
am I
see.
blurry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ever since you stepped away, came back.
Oh, maybe
Oh,
the
really?
autofocus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a different person.
No.
Dissolving.
You have this like you're
Yeah,
like
I
Whoa.
see that.
you're like a angel now. Like the aura. Yeah. Yeah.
There I am. Oh,
Oh.
is that
Yeah.
Yes.
So
is that any sharper?
oh
Yeah, that's a lot
that's
sharper.
great.
I think
Yeah.
it's probably
Weird.
like the fading light.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think there's also like I think there might be a filter too on Zoom, so it like doesn't know where I begin and the background starts.
Yeah, Dan, sorry, I don't want to take over. Did you have any questions for Ron?
Oh, not questions, but I just don't want to like. I'm pretty sure the kid's gonna wake up soon.
Yeah. So maybe I guess maybe we should wrap it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess final thoughts would be what we do things, right? We post social media posts, we write, we study, we're like something I practice. I do some Zen meditation now, and there's a teacher nearby. There's a teacher that I went to in Los Angeles, but I was lucky to find a temple here too, to do some sitting once a week. But yeah, we were reading a passage one time about searching, right? Searching, we're always searching. And I think in many respects, like Rama, I see a kindred spirit in you. Like I think in many ways, I look at what you're doing and your travels, and I'm like, oh, that kind of reminds me of myself, and then in some ways, I think, okay, yeah, that's also, and this is my theory, and don't take this personally, but I think it's probably like why we're not as close as friends as you and Elliot, because we're a little bit too similar. I have this theory that there's
Well,
like the Myers-Briggs thing, right? There's certain personalities where like they can't be too close, because then they compete for this limelight or something like that,
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I think the only reason I'm very good friends with Elliot is because he lived with me for a year.
Oh yeah.
That's the big thing. If you lived with me for a year, man, we'd be super duper tight. I mean, I suppose, yeah.
Sorry, that's just me and my pseudo psychology right now. But
okay.
Yeah. So what my main question is, before we head out, is like, what is your why? Like and this is like, I think you've already touched on this a little bit with your methodology, but what keeps you going as far as, doing these breakdowns? Because I look at these breakdowns and they take time, they take effort, to like, you have to collect the clips, edit, you have to organize your thoughts. So I'm kind of curious, what is your why? Like you've mentioned in your website that you want to share. You believe that education is civilization's most vital tool.
Mhm.
So is your why is basically to further humanity as through information, informing people about martial arts, and maybe martial arts as a path of enlightenment, like Bruce Lee mentioned before. Yeah, I'm kind of curious what your why is, I guess.
Yeah, long term, my goal is to create educational systems that benefit people, and allow for even students that might otherwise be marginalized to self-actuate in some way or the other. Like martial arts is just the thing I know really well, and it allows me to kind of express that. But yeah, I would like to apply it more broadly. And yeah, if I'm perfectly honest, I like the idea of gaming too as games. I think that is the kind of the next big thing within education. And we see some rumblings now, but I think in the future it's going to be a lot of things are going to be gamified, and sometimes it'll be invisibly gamified, but a lot of things will be gamified. And yeah, I think that's kind of the direction I'm going in right now. That's kind of where a lot of my fascination lies. So yeah, I would like for people that are curious about something to have multiple ways to look at it. And if we're given a video, or we're given a lecture, or we're given a museum, and we're given a way to examine it with a microscope, these are all great. And I just think gaming also allows us to take the mindset or the mission set of the player within that within their environment, whether it's like an amoeba, or whether you're the vice president of the United States. I mean, there are games that allow us to take on that role and make logical character decisions. And I think that's really important for us as a human race to be able to empathize and to act accordingly.
So in a way, it's kind of like through gamification, giving individuals tools for self-actualization, whatever that may be. And martial arts is, it was an avenue for many people. It's an avenue for me. I know it's a big part of Dan's life as well in your life. So, but it doesn't have to be necessarily just restricted to that. Because I know you also write about linguistics, and you wrote about the Joker.
Yeah, man. I thought that was a really great performance. The more I think about it, the more I think narratively it has some issues. But as an acting performance, holy God. I mean, yeah, Joaquin Phoenix just blew it out of the park.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. So yeah, we usually end with language corner. Yay. So we end with kind of like a cultural thing, or usually linguistically, that a phrase that we've learned recently. So I guess yeah, I think one thing that I got from one of your posts, and I is the puffle. Yeah. So I guess
yeah.
Poofle,
Yeah.
sorry. Okay. Where we talk about
whatever.
So I took judo for about what's that?
No, puffle. It's a made up thing I made, like Puma to say it's poofle. Like, it's just bullshit. Whatever.
Okay. I guess yeah. So there's some terms that I've learned before. So my cultural phrase would be like, there's kazushi, right? Kazushi is like when you I did judo for a year and a half, and my teacher was like, oh, do kazushi. And I always just thought of kazushi as like
pull,
grab the guy and pull him somehow, or like shove him some way, and then do but then so I looked at your thing, I was like, oh, so that's what kazushi in a more specific in specific terminology, unbalancing is what you call it, right? Yeah. So I guess, do you want to quickly talk about this concept, Poofle, or
of Poofle? Okay, so
I
Poofle,
mean, kazushi and tsukurikomi and kake are the Japanese terms that, I guess,
Yes. So Poofle is 5 letters, and they each stand for one thing. So P is position, This is the original position, the original arrangement of bodies that the two combatants are in. Then you have the kuzushi, the unbalancing. This is the U. So yes, and unbalancing can be anything. It's any kind of setup that allows the defender's stance, posture, or structure to be in the wrong place to defend. So like if you can imagine, like if I'm in the middle of a cartwheel, well, fuck, I'm not defending anything. So like if I can get my opponent to do a cartwheel, well, shit, I'm going to take them down with anything. So the idea is what can we do to get rid of these defenses? Then we have the fitting in. Fitting in Japanese is tsurikomi and tsurikomi. There we go. And that is the maximization. That's basically we're entering into our position and we're maximizing potential energy and also placing our fulcrums in the correct place. And we hope to also maintain the off balancing that we just built. Then we have the E.
Sorry. So like, for example, maybe drop seonage, like going into that. Like
yes, exactly. Yeah. Okay. So like with the seonage, however you can get their feet to be parallel, well, that's a great time to throw somebody forward, right? Because their weak axis is like this. As opposed to this. Now, if I try to take one forward, their weight's not forward enough, and the weak angle is still being supported by this left foot. So it's not as effective. Okay. So then, in going with the seonage example, execution. So now we're releasing this potential energy that's in our body, and we're taking the person into their least stable direction if we're trying to be as efficient as possible. Then they fall, and then we end with L, landing. And this is where we actually maintain the position. In Judo, this has kind of gone out the window where people just kind of like want to get them on their back and then that's the opponent and it's over. But in every other martial art, like being able to maintain your position and get on top is important. And in Jiu-Jitsu, you want to avoid the guard. And in wrestling, you don't mind having a leg because that's going to keep them on their back.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I know, like, if that was a bit like for my judo teacher, he was also into he practiced BJJ as well. So the thing we would do is that we continue on the ground doing the waza groundwork for like at least 30 seconds. Sometimes he would just like, let's keep going until submission, you know? Yeah. So so he would, the landing part was like we would try to land in maybe like what's a kesakatame, scarf hold, I guess. Yeah. Or try to land in like some position where we could get side control or whatever. So I saw that. So I and I like how you also connected with like its lineage. Well, suppose, you know, and sorry, this is probably for another podcast, but I guess there's wrestling, judo, there's some interplay between those, because wrestling is a super old art, right? Yeah. So I guess some of these terms,
I mean, like
probably, So that's a rabbit hole we can get down to.
I mean, if you guys have not already, it's worth listening to. It's called A Hero of a Thousand Holds. And this guy, Ruin, he goes down, he looks at like kind of isolated cultures. And then you look at like the grappling tradition that they had. Every culture on earth has grappling. Every culture. And it's just a human, it's pre-mammalian, like, you know what I mean? As reptiles, when we were Komodo dragons, we were wrestling. I know that's not how evolution works, but like when we, you know, before we were mammals, we were still, you know, wrestling was still a thing. He just talks about the universality of it and how important it is for anthropology and sociology and culture broadly. And it's really cool. So in that case, there are many different rules in grappling and wrestling. But yes, it's our oldest sport because it doesn't need all we need is two people and gravity and the ground.
Yeah. So so just again for our listeners, position, unbalancing, fitting in, execution, landing, pufo, concept that Rama has come up with. I think is a great I think it's a great way to organize the information, and there's a great mnemonic for it. So I guess because in Japanese it would be what kazushi tsukurikomi kake, or yeah,
Yeah, I
they
tried figuring this out. I think I put
yeah,
like the
you
way
put
the
like
you know how
kuku, yeah, yeah,
yeah, so
kuku tsu kana, yeah. Because
kuku
basic
tsukana.
because kazushi also includes position, I'm assuming, or
No, the first ku is kumikata,
oh,
so that's
kumikata.
grip fighting.
Oh, grip
Uh,
fighting, yeah, kumikata, yeah. Okay.
so then we have kumikata, kuzushi, tsurikomi, kake, and then gosh, what's the last one?
Na, I guess landing, nage,
Oh,
yeah.
nage.
Yeah, nage throw. Cool. Awesome. So anyways, I think that covers our language corner. There's a bunch of terms in there for our
Yeah.
listeners. Any last thoughts, Rama, do you want to share before we end the call?
Yeah, going back to the gaming thing really quickly.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm launching a boxing board game. And if you look up boxingboardgame.com, you'll see the website. If you're curious to play it, let me know. There's a print and play. So basically you can sign up and you'll get a free print and play of the demo game, and you can play with your friends and family. And I look forward to your feedback and changing it if the need arises.
Awesome. Yeah.
So that's my plug.
I'll include a link in the description below. Anything else? What are you working on now? I guess you want to be teaching full time at the end of the year. Do you want to promote your school at all, or yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I teach in Berlin. It's called Modern Martial Arts Group, but most of what I put out into the world is on my Instagram, ramareddy.mma. And if you're curious about anything, just send me a note or a voice note or something, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. Yeah, and I work with a local promotion called We Love MMA, and yeah, and they have all my videos on there. So if you just can't get enough, that's where to find the rest of them.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks so much. Dan, any last thoughts? Yeah.
No, I just appreciate those conversations you had, especially with a newborn kid. It's pretty tough to carve out an hour and a half for us. So thank you.
No, I appreciate the patience too, and your sympathy for knowing what I'm going through. So yeah, thanks guys. I appreciate you taking the time, and I do hope we can have another conversation maybe later this year.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Whenever you have the time.
When your precious time. Thank you so much for sharing it with us today. All right. And we're signing out.
Cool, guys.
And I'll go ahead.
Thanks,
Stop
Rama.
recording.